Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Living in Oneness Experience podcast. This is Cyndi to say that I am happy to be here with my friend Susan Telford. Is not even touching the openness, the love, the gratitude that I feel. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Cyndi. It's lovely to be with you today.
Oh, and it was very funny because Susan and I were just talking, and we're both really good at this, being podcast hosts, and normally we have a title, we have an expectation, we do a little bit of research so we know what it is we want to talk about with our guests. But we're both hosts, and we've known each other for a lot of years now. We've been working together, we've been friends, we've been walking a similar but unique path. I don't know how best to put it, but so many of our where we light up has just crossed, even though we live on two different sides of the Atlantic. And when we sat, even in a meeting we were in a few days ago, and said, what should the title be? What should we talk about? It was, the present moment will show us the way. Yeah.
Indeed.
So I can tell you that my intention for this hour with Susan is, wow, the words that are coming through is to lighten the load, which I believe which I believe just means, there's this space within our teachings that we're asked to recognize that all is well, that regardless of what our current experience is, it's temporary, and it is arising in this spaciousness that is changeless, that is eternal. Perhaps you could call it the Tao. I love calling it the Tao, presence, consciousness. And from that space, whatever the current moment issue is, it won't last. And it's not personal. And it is being embraced even as we speak in this changeless presence. And from there, when you step in there, regardless of what's going on in your story, there is this sense of openness and acceptance and a lighter quality to whatever the present story is. And so my intention is that if you're here now, you can get a glimpse of that, perhaps a taste, perhaps a bite. My real prayer is that it would maybe be installed in you sort of like a virus, that stillness, that feeling that all is well. Maybe Susan and I can infect you with that virus and have it just fill you and guide you and brighten your smile a bit. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Is there any other intention that's coming through you, Susan?
So we had, I think you spoke to me about sitting on the beach and feeling something. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and then we can see where that goes, because that took me in a slight direction. So, but it's your story to tell.
Yeah. So I was on a family getaway. My sister has a beach on the my sister has a beach. My sister has a house
on the beach
in New Jersey on Long Beach Island. And I was sitting it's a second floor balcony early in the morning. The sun had just gone up. The waves were loud. I was high enough so that the houses that were across the street did not interrupt my view of the ocean. I could hear the ocean flowing through me. I could feel There's this kind of the air, the salty air when you're near the ocean early in the morning. It sort of blankets you with this amazing sense of presence and peace. Nobody else in the house was awake. The world was quiet except for the sound of the waves and the seagulls. And I took this breath and realized that there was nothing about me that wasn't at peace in that moment. I was open. I was quiet. I was just there. There was no words. And then there was this realization that without exception, it was the same thing I feel when I'm walking by the river here where I live, or when I'm sitting on my little terrace watching the hummingbirds, or there's this little duck, or I'm sitting on the back couch in my contemplation, or even when I'm just sort of hanging out with a good friend and we're having this kind of conversation about life or love or God. And there was just this sinking into the recognition that peace was who I was in those moments where I wasn't worried about who I was or what I needed to do or where I needed to go. It was with me all the time. I didn't need to drive 400 miles or go on vacation, to the point where when I came back and I called Dove, Dave Fishman, to talk about whatever we were supposed to talk about. When he asked me, how was your vacation? It felt like a foreign question. It was so strange. And I said to him, Dove, I don't think I ever have to go on vacation again. Vacation is the sense of needing to leave your life so that you can relax and be at peace or have fun. But that's who I am. I don't have to go anywhere or do anything different to know the truth. And so that's where Susan and I came up with the title of this podcast, right? Every day is a vacation day.
Yeah. Yeah, because we think that it's the sound of the waves, or the fact that no one's up and we're the only one, or the lovely holiday location. We think it's that gives us the peace, but it's not that. As you just said, it's this almost shocking realization that the peace is right here, always, now. It gets covered up often with all of the drama, to whatever extent I want to hook into the drama, but it's always there, always there. Yesterday, I was hosting a meeting and I led a guided meditation at the start of the meeting. And somebody at the end of it, I invited people to open their eyes and so we could begin the discussion. And somebody said, oh, I don't want to come back. I go, you take me to such a still place that I don't want it to end. I want to stay there. And what I said was, but can we stay there? Can we be there in the middle of the discussion? Not just sitting on the balcony on the beach, but when everything is apparently going wrong, excuse me, can we just be there all the time?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, right?
Mm-hmm. And so the next
really
question is how? For people who are listening to us who are saying, well, how do you do that?
Well, the very first answer that comes to me is number one. Be willing for the possibility that that's even possible. Like, do you want it? That is the very first thing. And it's the number one thing that I've been taught, that, Regina, right? She's in my head saying there's nothing more important than hanging out in your spiritual aspiration. So if you know that that is your goal, so that's the very first thing. And you're, even though that's not your experience, if you're willing for that and you hold that in your mind, then there's nothing more important than that. And I always equate it to a baby learning how to walk.
Mm.
You know, a baby who's learning how to walk is not filled with doubts. They could fall, 2,000 times, but it doesn't keep them from
They don't,
doing.
they don't feel guilty about it.
They don't feel guilty. They don't doubt. They don't say, well, it would have been nice to walk like everybody else, but it's not for me. They can have it, but I can't. They just keep pulling themselves up.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there isn't anything more important than that. It's sort of like putting the location in the GPS. So that's the first thing that comes up. The second thing immediately that comes up when you say that, again, I see that baby is practice, or spiritual practice, whatever it looks like. I don't really, there's a million different ways to do it, right? But knowing that this is what we want, number two, and then number two, be willing to spend time every day in whatever your current spiritual practice is, whether it's contemplation or meditation or being part of a group like you were describing you were with yesterday, or going to India or going to hang out with Muji, whatever your spiritual practice is, making it a part of your daily work, whether it feels like it's working or not. It's number two. Yeah. Does that both feel right to you? Is there anything?
Yeah, yes, I agree. And also, knowing that it's your natural state, it's who you are. That, I think that's when things really changed for me. Going from being a spiritual seeker for decades, trying all sorts of different paths. I was a committed Buddhist for 20 years. And I tried really hard. My type A personality was all over my spiritual path. But then the recognition that peace and happiness are here now. If they're not here now, then they're nowhere. They're here right now, and they're not something that I achieve or earn or work my way towards, even though paradoxically practices are useful. But there's something about, don't you think, there's something about having that recognition that, there is, people say things like, you hear teachers say things like, what doesn't come and go? Everything changes. Everything's changing constantly. But what is it about you that, as you said earlier, is changeless? Actually looking at that and thinking, is there anything? Is there anything there that's changeless? And you find that there is. You think, well, what's that then? What's that? And then for me, it all took on a different, it changed, the journey changed from Susan trying to achieve some kind of inner peace through spiritual practice to realizing that peace is here, always here. No matter what can come on top of it. Like the sea.
Other...
did a sea motion there. I did a wave motion.
So the other part of it, and I guess, I did do a teaching last month on focused around the golden key. And I think that on top of everything else that lights me up, it's this understanding, not from a personal standpoint, but our choice, where we place our attention really colors our experience. And so these practices and showing up for spiritual community and taking these courses, they help us, like our our attention, the part of us that directs our attention, more and more gets placed on these truth teachings, on that presence. And when that happens, the attention that had been placed on problems in the world and thinking we needed to obtain anything, we can't be, we're not in two places at once. So when we're placing our attention, the golden key just invites us, whatever the problem is, just name it, and then stay fully focused. The golden key, Emma Fox calls it God, but whether it's God or presence or awareness or the Tao or that which notices and is changeless, however it works in your mind, if your attention is there, then that's what's growing in your experience, right? If your attention is placed on problems, in my experience anyway, those problems seem to grow like weeds.
Yeah. When you give them your attention. Yeah, and that, you know, when we thought about a possible title being Every Day is a Vacation Day, I thought, well, when we go on, and it's really weird for me to say vacation because I say holiday. When we go on holiday, what are we looking for? You know, when I used to be a teacher, and believe me, we knew how many sleeps it was to each holiday, and we used to talk about it in the staff room all the time. It's only 72 sleeps to the summer holidays. But we wanted to go to get away from our life, you know, to get away from the normal life, to get almost to even to get away from from our day-to-day self. And I thought that's why every day can be a vacation day, because we don't have any desire to get away from this self. There's just a different feeling of, as you said, when you said to Dove that it didn't even make sense anymore. There is that kind of energy is just not there. Yeah.
So I'm inspired to actually bring it to, well, it's really the same, but it's different. So, like, I had an experience earlier in the week where something happened in the world that created a bit of a shock in this body, right? And these practices, one of the things that the practices have done for me is they've slowed everything down. So I become much more aware of my reactions to the world. So I received a call early in the morning. There was a lot of pain on the other end of the line. And I did and said all really good things. You know, I did and said and held this amazing peaceful presence for someone I care about. And I watched this body go into pain, which was an extraordinary, it'd be beautiful to be able to really put words on it. So I was in the presence, in that vacation space, fully aware of the stillness, right? And every part of my body went into pain. I could feel a vice-like grip around the heart area. There was a spasm. I even watched the worry thoughts sort of fill the mind, which was kind of interesting. So the body is in pain. There's an emotional body that is active, and I am aware of my stillness. I am aware of my peace. And I am, and the practice kicked in a way that was extraordinary, right? Just being able to stay in the peace and rest from the story. And it took hours, you know, sometimes it takes days, right? It took hours. The pain didn't magically go away, but I never lost the sense that the body, that I was embraced, and it wasn't an unpleasant experience. Can you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. because you know, things get held in the body, and it's like when you unplug a fan, the fan, even though it's unplugged. So even though there's the awareness now, the fan is still running down, the momentum's still running down, and these conditioned responses in the body still arise. But there's a space, isn't there? There's a space of watching. And it's this kind of two-track thing, that there can be real emotion, which really is just physical sensation. It's just sensation in the body, before we put a label on it and say, oh, that's grief or whatever. The sensation in the body is just running and running and running. And as you say, it can take a while. If you don't get involved in it and don't put a story onto it, it runs itself out. And I think often we short circuit that process for a couple of reasons. We might think, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like this. My spiritual path is supposed to be making me feel peace and joy and all of that stuff. And I know this is all happening. I must be doing something wrong. So we shut it down. Or we just get lost in the story, and the awareness closes down because we just jump over into the story. So to be able to just go, welcoming it. Here is this. And when we look, it's just sensation in the body, and just allowing that to be there, and knowing that even though they are quite strong sensations, I'm perfectly at peace. So what's that then? That's another portal, isn't it? It's another, looking at that and, well, what was that? What was that I? What was that sense of presence that was able to be present while that was going on? And all of these little glimpses, just, I don't know, they're well, I'll ask you the question, how did you feel? I mean, it's how did you feel at the end? I'm so aware here that I'm going to take over the host and start interviewing you. How did you feel, Cyndi?
It was so I don't feel like the host, Susan. It feels like we're having a conversation
that we've had many times.
Right. And this time it's being recorded. That's all this is. What was extraordinary, and it came up for me this morning, is that it really boils down to where I'm going to place my faith, right? So that particular experience lasted about a day and a half, give or take. And I was so grateful for all the different ways we've practiced over the years. Knowing, all the teachings that we've been a part of within Evolve, and all the different teachers that have flown through that. The different teachings, Michael Singer is a big one for me, because I smile whenever I hear, Cyndi, if you want to heal, get used to pain. I hear it in his kind of New York style voice. And then the stepping back and the remembering that no matter what the world is presenting me, including this body, I can choose where to place my trust. So it was a beautiful, and I somehow knew through all my practice that this was a great opportunity. And then sometime the next day, about a day and a half, it just sort of slowly opened. I don't even know if I noticed. It was just the world is different now. Michael Singer again is coming up. He called them nadas. So I see them almost like kidney stones sitting in the heart area, right? That's the way, he described them. It doesn't matter what's true. None of this is ultimately true. It's all symbols. But Michael Singer gave me that picture of like a kidney stone, right? Blocking the energy flow in the heart center And as long as I don't feed it or try to fix it or believe it's anything other than an energetic block, presence just sort of dissolves it. And once that particular block is dissolved, it's dissolved forever. And when that same person reached out like 3 days later, and there was an understanding that their experience of the world hadn't changed, but there was no inner contraction and fear inside, just part of letting go of what's not and sinking back into what is here. It definitely fuels the desire to continue to withdraw my believing attention from the experience of life and place it where it's most useful.
Yeah. I wrote in my journal maybe, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or something. Lots of things were happening in my life, and I was sort of journaling in my contemplation. Cyndi and I both facilitate gentle healing groups at Awakening Together, and we have daily contemplations that we do. And I was kind of listing the areas that were seemingly chaotic, that things were happening. And it was health. I'd fallen and torn a ligament in my ankle. There was some health issues that I was having. Some relationship issues, particularly in my family of origin. Some things that were kind of rumbling in my marriage. And as I looked at it, I was kind of guided to say, well, what's the common denominator here? And it was, these are the areas that I have tried hardest to control. I've tried to control, because I've had quite a bit of ill health in my life, and I've really tried to control my health. I've really tried to control relationships. I've really tried hard to have good relationships with people, and to try and keep people together, and to really be that kind of central point in the family. And it was very clear that the reason chaos was happening in these areas was so that I could see that I was never in control of any of that. And it was on one hand, it looked bad, that, oh, why is this happening? Why is this happening? The mind said. But there was a real knowing from doing that contemplation and taking the time to journal and getting to the root of it, that it had to come up. These things had to come up. They had to shift and move in order that I could see that they were never mine to fix. They were never mine to control, and that everything is being perfectly choreographed in a way that I don't understand from this level. I don't know why things happen the way they happen, but I know that everything is unfolding in the only way that it can, given all of the players and all of the, everybody is contributing to the collective experience. And what a relief. It felt like such a relief to me to think, for years I'd had to have my fingers sort of prized off. And yet just to see I was never in control, never. That felt really liberating, actually. Turned around the whole situation.
One of the things in my head that comes up a lot along that lines is just remembering it's not personal, right? And I've found myself in recent days and weeks and months looking back over the now almost 60 years, a couple more days, and I recognized that I didn't script this life. Cyndi did not script this life. There is nothing about my dreams in my 20s or my teens or my 30s. There was nothing, there was no action that I took, that I choreographed, that I planned that got me to this moment. Even the greatest jobs that happened to me, they showed up,
Always
basically.
that way, isn't it? It's always that way. We think we're planning everything and we're going to have this life, and yet things happen. Even if you think about, when you meet your husband or your partner or whatever, people always say, "Oh, it was such a coincidence." It was just all of these things had to. It's like the movie Sliding Doors, isn't it? One little thing changes and a whole life is different. We've no
Don't know the movie. I guess
the movie Sliding Door. Oh, put it on your list, Cyndi.
Sliding Doors.
Yeah, you'll like it, I think.
I am currently doing a book study with my sisters and my cousin, and we're doing 1,000 Names for Joy, which is just, I don't know, just hanging out like that with Byron Katie is beautiful. But I also assign a movie in between each, because there isn't a lot of words, and this group doesn't do a lot of contemplating, and so we assign movies. This week's movie is My Octopus.
I've not seen that either.
Well, then there's one for your list.
My list's right here. I've got a list on here of books and movies because people are always mentioning, and I scribble them down on the blotter that's in front of me at my desk.
It's one of the most beautiful, it's a documentary, but it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. My Octopus Teacher.
Well, tonight's movie watching is going to be it's a documentary called Chasing the Present. Have you heard of that?
No.
That was recommended to me by Bill yesterday, so we're going to watch that. It's on Amazon Prime. Russell Brand.
Chasing the Present. Here we go.
Here's another one for you.
All right. So
I have to read you a poem, Cyndi, on on this topic. This was around the time of the contemplations that I was talking about. I wrote this poem. It's called Everything Is as It Is. Everything is as it is. Control is illusion. The wind blows, the sea roars, the sun shines, the cat purrs, the people make war and also make love, and slowly, inexorably, eyes open, breath is noticed, gratitude arises, life moves, everything is as it is.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. All right. I am inspired to summarize where we are so far.
Okay.
Before I'm in such a peaceful, quiet, accepting space that for a moment there, I forgot we were recording a podcast. That's pretty cool. So essentially, what we're pointing to is the awareness that none of us, and that it means none of us that are Susan and I and anyone who's listening ever have to go on vacation again. Anything that we're searching for, that we're seeking out there, the next day we get a day off, or when we walk away from our lives to do something else, is actually with us all the time. So we never have to stop being who we are, living our lives, to feel that joy, that peace, that relaxation that the mind tells us we can only get when we're on vacation. So From there, the question arose, well, it's easy for you to say. My life is much more stressful than yours. It was that was an interesting space too. And you and I have both, we're in this accepting place, but a number of years ago we weren't, right? I was looking at where I was 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and my experience of life was hell. I had severe panic disorder. I lived in a house that literally was falling, like the roof was falling, the basement was full of mold, the mortgage wasn't being paid. There were two teenage girls and an ex-husband who didn't like me, all living under this same roof. There was lack of money. There was significant health issues. I almost died during that period of time. So my life would not have pointed to the awareness of this, and yet the first thing we said we needed to do was set our intention, right? And that can be done no matter what your life looks like. And that's what I did then. I know, I don't know if you want to talk to it. I know enough about your story and some of where you've been and the writing you did when your life looked different than it does now. And would you call that setting your intention or stating your prayer? Or
I don't think I would actually, because I didn't want any of it. You know my story. I was a high school teacher. I was head of year in a school and very, very busy, very driven, working 80 hours a week, very dedicated, never looked after myself. And although I'd been on a spiritual path of various kinds, I felt as though this job was my vocation. I really felt that. And so when I had a really severe burnout, which put me in bed for 6 months, all I could think of was getting back out and getting back to the school. That I didn't want anything else. That was what I wanted. And I was really angry that why has this all gone wrong? So at that stage, there was no sense of setting any intention. My intention was to get back to school because I still wanted to be in control. That's such a major theme of my life. Susan knew best. Susan just wanted to get back to school and get back to normal. And it just was, it was like there was this other force. I came to call it fierce grace, because there seemed as though there was this other force that was saying, no, no, no. You mentioned a GPS before. My GPS was inner GPS was definitely going, do a U-turn. At the next opportunity, do a U-turn. And I was saying, no, I want to go this way. I want to go this way. I want to go this way. And I don't know what it is about I'm sure people listening can relate to this. We might be exposed to these teachings and we might hear things and we might think, oh, that sounds nice. But often, individually and collectively, it seems to take something that stops you in your tracks. Oprah described it as God speaks to you in a whisper, and then he speaks in a louder voice, and then he shouts, and if you still don't listen, he hits you with a brick upside the head. That's definitely what happened to me. Because I knew there was another way, that I was being shown a different life. And I was just so full of, oh, I can't do that. What would people think? Thinking that I would be on, a podcast called the Awareness Podcast that people might listen to who actually know me. That had to be all cleared out before I could really show up and even get to a point where there was any intention. And Cyndi, the more I go on with this, the less I think there's choice. I really do. From this, you've just alluded to that, from this point of the body mind, there isn't choice. The choice, we seem to claim it afterwards. So I did that. I love the thing that Francis Lucille says. He says it's like the clown who comes on the stage after the ballerina has danced and takes the applause due to the ballerina. And it's so like that, isn't it? That we think, you know, I'm choosing my thoughts, I'm choosing my actions, I'm choosing this. But yeah, are we? To what extent are we? Because it all seems to be perfectly choreographed. I think it's like a tapestry. You know, when you do a big tap, you see one of these massive tapestries, and on one side there's the beautiful artwork, you know, the gorgeous picture of something, and then you go around the back and it's just a huge big tangled mess of knots. Seems to be like that.
And even as I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about the so-called circumstances in Cyndi's life right now that can pull on the heartstrings, there's nothing I could do about any of it. And if there's anything that I could do about any of it, it's focusing on my own quote unquote self-realization, right? Resting in the awareness and letting the churning, the nadas, the blocks be healed. And they'll either be healed or they won't be healed. They'll either take a minute, an hour, a day, or a month. It's totally out of my control. That's just a beautiful thing. It's just like we have no control over who's going to be listening to us right now. We have no control over anyone's reaction or response. We've set an intention and we surrendered it. The prayer is that more and more of us live in that awareness of the truth, the stillness of who we are.
Yeah.
We can't make it happen, though, can we?
We can't make it happen. No. I think all we do is look. When we're exposed to these kind of teachings, we can look and see, does this resonate? Is this true? Is this my experience? Is it true there's something about me that's never changed? As everything in my life has changed, and my life changed radically, you know, from, I mean, even, you know, working for the Teachers of God Foundation, who would have ever thought that, you know? That just came about from me writing in my journal, being really angry. I thought I was supposed to be a teacher, yes, not of mathematics, a teacher of God. And I thought, what's a teacher of God? Googled it, and then just approached Lisa Natoli in the first instance. I think I might have to work for you. That's so out of character for me, Cyndi, to even do that. Yeah, it's only in retrospect that I can see all the little pieces that I fought so hard against. That I think that would be the only thing I would say to somebody is don't fight. You know, just don't fight. You can do it the hard way or the easy way. You know, I came kicking and screaming, thinking I knew best. But now I know better than that. I know just to surrender. Because everything, there's an intelligence at work in the universe far greater than is in this head.
Absolutely. So every moment is a vacation based on the human definition. That most of the script is pretty much out of our control. That when choice arises, very, very, very useful to show up for the practice. And what practice? Well, the one that lights you up, the one that you're drawn to. What teacher? Well, the one that feels right to you, the one that you just find yourself wanting to spend time with. For how long? Well, sometimes there's this space of needing to force it early on, but more and more once you get over that original hump. At least my experience is there's nothing I'd rather do than hang out in the energy of the teachers that light me up and the contemplations and these practices, because they're sort of become like a snowball effect, I think, in my life experience. That's the best way I could talk about it. And I've heard a lot of teachers that light me up talk about it. In the beginning of the spiritual path, it feels a little bit like you were talking about. Everything feels like it's an effort and you're pushing that snowball uphill, and man, it's a lot of work. And at some point you get to the top and it starts rolling down. The more glimpses you get, the easier it is to hang out here, because man, they feel good.
I think that's the case with everything. Often people say, in the coaching work that I do, often people say to me, but I don't know how to hear inner wisdom. I don't know how to do it. And that's such a good that's such a good guideline, I think, is what lights you up. What's follow. Is it Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss? I think he was on to something there. Yeah, there seems to be something in us, isn't there, that's kind of lights up when we see something or we're drawn towards something.
Yeah. Like this, like there's no place I'd rather be than right here, right now, in this space, in this energy, in this place. Just so phenomenal. I wonder, Susan, is there more to share during this podcast? We started earlier than we planned, so I don't even have a clue how long we've been talking. I don't know where we are. I know that it feels good. I am very grateful for everyone that's here. I would love that if you're here and you're listening to us, that you let us know how this has affected you.
Yeah. There's a comment section in the show notes for this podcast. So we'd love to hear in the comments, as Cyndi said.
And
if anything we said, or you have any questions, we'll certainly respond to you.
And also, it's so interesting, and you've spoken to it a little bit, and it's coming up now. What does it mean to be a good spiritual student, and what am I allowed to ask, and what am I allowed to admit to, and all those things. After my podcast, I tend to hear from, different number of people each month, but all they ever really say is thank you. I really enjoyed it, which I love, by the way.
Yes.
And I wonder how many people say, here's my question, and then decide it's a stupid question, or it will reveal something about who they are or their lives or something that they don't want to share. And I would really, I'm very interested in hearing if you didn't like the podcast, or if there was a question that you were left wanting the answer to. I read everything that comes towards me, and I know Susan does, and I would love to hear those types of comments too.
Yeah.
So other than that, this feels whole and complete and still and beautiful. Perfect. Is there more you'd like to share, Susan?
I don't think there is.
Then all there's left really for me to do is say thank you, Susan, for agreeing to spend this time with me. To say that it was a pleasure is also, can't put words to the experience.
Thank you for asking me, Cyndi.
And thank you to all of you who are listening. If you loved it, then please share it. Share all of these podcasts. They all come, all of the hosts and the guests come with this open heart and this desire to bring more love and light and joy and truth into the world. And so everything that you do to help us get the word out, we are beyond grateful. If there's something you'd like to be different, or you have questions or comments or suggestions, man, we'd love to hear those too. So thank you for being here. Please check out all of the podcasts in the Awareness podcast series.
Will be number 36.
This is 36.
Yeah.
Wow. 36 of 52 for this year.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right. Love to all. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cyndi.